All right, good morning, everybody. And good morning to you as well, Alan. Happy holidays. And as always, give everybody a minute or two here to log on. And if you can hear me, just let me know. And good morning, Carol. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, pretty cold here too, Barry. Little brief, but it's supposed to get into the 40s, I think. So, yeah, a little better. Had a little midday break. I think me and a couple guys are going to go throw some discs out there today. Got ourselves the Santa Claus rally window is opening this week. We'll see how that goes. I think if I remember correctly, the Santa rally has something like a 75 or 80% success rate as far as forecasting. So we get the rally. Get ready for a likely good year. But if not, all right. Giving it a few minutes here, so let's get this show on the road. And yeah, last week, good times. Speaking of, I gotta mark my I forget to mark my FOMCs. Just make sure to get this gem in there. There we go. So, pretty nice one there on Wednesday, which I think our expectations, we were leaning towards a downside move. I don't know, at any time you're thinking to yourself, hey, 3% or 2% or whatever. As a matter of fact, I don't know that we ever do that. It's more just up or down. So, you know, we've done a pretty good job over the past 3 years, illustrating that more often than not, the more the market forecasts, its FOMC move before it ever happens. So um, we looked at the Nasdaq, and just like we discussed last week, the market's been in decline for a couple weeks. So the we look at the Nasdaq 100 here is one of the indexes we like to look at, and so this gives the impression, if we just looked at it, that the market was heading higher when the reality is it wasn't. Right? So S&P had stopped moving higher, a week and a half before, and we've obviously discussed the struggles the Russell, the NYSE, and the Dow were all having for a couple weeks before, right? So now, a lot of times we like to isolate that kind of FOMC forecast to, well, what's been happening super recent, like in the day before, a couple days before, the week of. And when we looked at the S&P and P and we looked at everybody, I don't know that there was anything too terribly convincing as far as that goes, other than, again, if you take the weight of the evidence, right, this is where we were going into the FOMC. It just looks like something that's going to go lower, right? Same thing with the Russell, same thing with the Dow. Everything, seemed to point towards lower in all likelihood. So, so the decline on Wednesday was no real surprise. Not to mention we were down before the FOMC statement and press conference ever, happened. So, if there was a quote surprise, I think that would be, um, the magnitude of the drop. So a big 3% or haven't anything, like that since back over here. This kind of little 2-day drop, and I believe this one here from here to here was a pretty nice one right there at the beginning of August. So other than that, it's the second biggest drop in the entire year, but the last 12 months. So it was a doozy. And as you can see on that Wednesday and that Thursday, where the S&P hold up, right, exact same place it held up back here. Looked like we were in trouble to start our Friday. As a matter of fact, um, an hour or two before the market opened, a couple hours before the market opened on Friday, we were down much, much more, twice as much. But sure enough, battled back, didn't want to break that line, and ended up in the green for the day. Now, when I look at, for me, when I look at that Friday, nothing about that tells me like should be too, ecstatic about an upside move. But hey, we were higher for the day, and we did hold the line, so to speak. So I came into the week somewhat indifferent. If you told me we moved lower from here, that would be consistent with what's been happening for, again, over 2 weeks now. If you told me we moved higher, well, it's been a pretty resilient market. Big shocker. So kind of, like I said, indifferent as we come into this week. And as I mentioned, this is the Santa Claus rally window is opening this week. I think tomorrow. Let's see, one, two, today or tomorrow. Anyway, and going into the first 2 days of next year, and that's been relatively reliable. Um, as I said, I think it has like a 75, 90% win rate or something, 75 to 80% ish. I think it's been more accurate when there's a rally in forecasting an up year. So at least in the last, this century or last 30 years or so. So worth a watch. Obviously, there's also the January barometer, as we call it, and so forth and so on. So kind of look at that whole trifecta and see what we end up with. But um, a couple years ago, 2022, end of 2021, 3 years ago, that kicked off the bear market. So there's nothing saying that we have to have a good end of year, beginning of the year stretch. It could be pretty rough. But I don't think that's the case. I think that we've had a pretty nice rally, at least for now. I don't think that's the case. Um, Historically, the only time that I personally call for any correction slash bear market, I think 100% of the time it's in conjunction with a larger momentum divergence. So either weekly, but more often or not monthly. So for example, just using this, how are we able to forecast the 2022 bear? Whoops. Again, momentum on a large scale, right? So looking at the monthly here, and did I not go back all the way? Oh, whoops. Okay, just kind of looking back through here, right? So this is a monthly, large scale. So it doesn't matter what we're talking about. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. You know, price patterns, key levels, candlesticks, momentum. In this case, you always want to keep in mind the larger the scale, usually the more reliable, right? And then the larger the implication, of course. Um, Keeping it simple here, a hammer candle that we see forming on a 1 minute chart really doesn't mean much of anything. Okay, um, but a big candle like that on a monthly, that means a lot, and it implies a lot. It's harder to form, So typically they will be more reliable. You won't see them as often, right? So looking at a 5 minute, you could see, I don't know, 10 of those fire off in a day. So if we're just firing them off right and left, I don't know how meaningful they're going to be. But something, that only forms once in, say, 10 years, right, is going to probably be more reliable and a lot more meaningful. So when you look back, um, you can kind of see the previous five, but this was the one that formed going into 2022, right? So after that first leg down, it kind of put the momentum divergence in, right? And we looked back, and what happened the previous four times? Well, you got either a correction or a bear market, so it wasn't too hard to call, right? Interesting thing we see here is a very, very long term possible divergence, right? So if you go, from the peaks here, then the lower, right, then the lower, the momentum of this move is not as strong as this one. It's not as strong as this one. Neither here nor there. I tend to focus on the current trend, the current bull move. But when you pan out to look at something like this, it kind of makes you wonder: are we seeing a secular, like a big time major top being put in at some point? I'm not talking about this week or next month or anything like that. I'm just saying overall. Remember, this is monthly, right? So, in order for us to even put in a similar version of this, remember what has to happen. We have to continue to fall or turn things around, you know, and go higher in price, and then put in a lower momentum peak for that to happen, right? So even if we were putting one here, it would take a couple months for us to see that. Okay, so I generally, I don't know that to the best of my recollection, I've never called anything larger than pullbacks and such, unless I see something like that. You can kind of see here's a daily momentum divergence. And what does it tell us? It tells us, well, all these little rallies here that we've had, none of them had a momentum divergence. None of them, by the way, got this overbought. Okay, and it tells us that this decline, right, is the conditions are ripe for a bigger pullback than what we have endured through this run up. And sure enough, that's what we got, right? Price kind of confirms it, rally back up, hit the underside, and then bloop, bloop, right? But, you can have more dailies than, you know, um, I mean, certainly there's a case to be made. There's a divergence here as well. I mean, if you look back, right, look at that, the price just keeps going higher, right? So you can make the case, same thing here. Bearish pattern, momentum, bam. So we don't really see anything like that at this point. So I would think that for now, I don't know that no matter where this takes us, this little decline it's been going on here for a couple weeks. No matter where it takes us, for now, I would think it's just it's been a good run, right? Nothing wrong with pulling back. So, um, but I think ultimately we run to new highs, and then I think that's where you start to get a little bit nervous about what comes after. And we discussed this last week. I think everyone needs to just remember what we've seen, um, take place with the yield curve uninversion, right? The threes and tens, what we've seen historically. We showed that last week, right? And when Fed starts cutting rates, typically that kind of puts us on the clock for a bearish move, not a bullish move. Refresh my memory. If we didn't, I can pull it up here, but somebody posted a pretty great chart of those two together, illustrating that contrary to what the mainstream would lead you to believe. But you don't need a mainstream. You don't need some dude in a suit to tell you that, right? Prior to just a couple months ago, what had the Fed been doing? Raising rates. If it's so darn bearish, what has the market been doing for 2, 3 years? Moving higher. Okay. If you were around for 2007, 8, 9 bear market, what was happening in 2004, 5, 6? Rates were rising. What was the market doing? Going higher. Right. So you don't need some guy from Goldman Sachs to tell you that. I mean, you're living it, right? So I think against that backdrop, that's why I say we need to be. I just don't think anyone should be surprised, right? If come the beginning next year, the first half of next year, that the market sees some trouble. Um, for now, we trade right. We trade what we see, and right now we would look at that as a market moving higher. But yeah, just be cautious going into next year. And I will always, like I said, if I see a weekly, monthly type divergences, that's when we start, getting prepared. Because as you can see, the last 5 of those on a monthly, um, the S&P is 5-0, right? Getting something on average a bear market. So that's the market, right? Any questions? And like I said, coming into this week, we're obviously shorter term traders. I don't really have a bias one way or another. For those of you in prime time, you know that because we put on a couple strangles. I really wasn't too terribly picky. We also threw on a call because market finished higher, um, and Dell looked like it was having a decent close. A lot of stocks didn't. I always remember. I always try to make sure my students keep in mind that just because a stock is up doesn't mean it's having a bullish day, right? And just because it's down doesn't mean it's bearish. A lot of hammer candle reversals that are bullish are down days, you know? So you want to make sure you look at it within context, not only, the whole day and what that looks like, but also, take something like Tesla, you know? Well, no, never mind. This clearly isn't the one I was thinking. Although I will say nothing about this looks too terribly bullish. I was looking at this at the weekly, and that looks terrible. Nothing about that looks good. So I'd be a little curious about that. And it's had a great run. I mean, pretty good. You don't go up forever. Never have, never will. So you have to wash out some excesses. I will say this thing comes back down to this 360 area. That's where it gets a little bit interesting if that happens. We were targeting getting to 400 potentially last week until the market rallied. But even in the face of the market rally on Friday, Tesla's still down. You know, I think Tesla kind of does its own thing most of the time anyway. So, and a lot of other stocks keep an eye on. Keep an eye on Carvana right off that gap window there. Okay, a little over there, and then boop, right hold. Kind of a nice little close. Kind of makes it look like it wants to move back up again. Um, keep an eye on. I was looking at this when we started the call. Right off that 25 mark, just like it knew my little green line was there. So keep an eye on this. This is a great little range between 25 and 28. Obviously, could it be putting in a bottom? Sure. Could it also be a continuation before falling down to this area? Right. This 22 goes back quite some ways. So if you fail to hold 25, easy target 22 overall. Right? We were looking at UNH last week, desperately trying to take that 500 back. You can see back to back to back days, just trying and trying, kind of closing right at it or pretty close to it 2 out of these last 3 days, opening at it the other one. So a lot of questions about when to get involved here. When remember you don't have to quote pick a bottom, right? I mean let it tell you. So in this case, you know It seems to be telling us if we can take this 500 out, then look for some recovery. Okay. And I would think once that recovery starts, tough to say. I mean, this would seem to be too, and again, I was kind of curious about this even being important still. But I think this up here is. So if you're looking for something to hold on to, well, if this thing gets ahead of steam, you can see here or up here, this kind of breakdown shelf up top. So I'll be watching in those areas on that. Otherwise, who else? We saw a few stocks we liked the way they closed. App really closed. And look at the difference, right, between the way App closed and say the way Tesla closed. Just as a stock. Now, of course, you want to look at the market, right? So, um, as I was saying on my calls, right, we rise and fall with the market. If the market decides it's going to be up 2% one day, you probably just don't want to be in puts. I don't know if I want to buy in puts on anything. You know, I'd rather go ahead and buy a put as a protective hedge on my calls, right, than try to pick that one little gem that's not going to go up in a 2% rally. I'd rather lean into it and then protect myself on the downside in case, you know, um, the market decides otherwise. Who else were we looking at last week? MSTR had a nice turnaround. I wasn't really a big fan of what I saw with Bitcoin. Just kind of looking at that chart. It certainly looks. I haven't looked at it today, so hold on a second before I say that. I thought when I was looking at it at the end of last week, I thought it didn't look great. Give me a second here. I'm not really sure where that ended up or what it was doing over the weekend. A lot of stuff going on there in the holidays or holiday lead up weekend there. Plus, had to watch my Buckeyes hand it to Tennessee. Can't get this to pop up here. Wake up. Here we go. Not much. It's fallen a little bit more, but nothing crazy. So, all right. Check that out there. Everything's moving kind of slow today. Give me a second. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of what I was seeing there. Chart's gotten a little sloppy, to be honest with you. All right. That out of the way. All right. So okay, yeah. So let's talk schedule real quick while everybody's here. So there won't be in short, after this call, I'll be gone until Thursday of next week. So no Marketcast call next week. No smart trades, no gambit, and the next primetime call won't be till Thursday morning. Now, for primetime folks, it doesn't mean I won't necessarily put a trade on, but it'd be via alerts. I'll be traveling all day, kind of leading up. But the next call would be Thursday AM. But all right, let's look at some of these stocks. Questions on Boeing, and all right. I don't know. I'm not sure if I consider this to necessarily still matter. I'd probably looking at the 180 and I don't know. It's kind of a mess through here. So you can see back in the day, we were watching this thing around 177 and a half or so. You can kind of see, I haven't taken it off, but you can kind of see it looks like maybe kind of sort of. So I don't know on the upside, but it does look like if you're looking for a pullback, that this is still something that's relevant back at 170, right? You had your support, you're obviously resistance on the gap down, your support, your resistance when it was under, support. I like that on a pullback, I think. I'm not sure on the upside if there's anything that would get me too excited. I don't know, maybe if you retook 190, but here it just looks kind of a little bit messy for me on that one. Yeah. I mean, when this kind of stuff happens, it's hard to say where we go from here. Um, in a vacuum, somebody might look at this as like maybe kind of, I don't know, a little bullish, but after they chuck $20 out the window, um, hmm. I mean, it's not something I'd be interested in all that much. I don't think do anything. I wouldn't, to be honest. But if I was looking to like, if I was going, if somebody said you gotta go long or short on this right now, I'd probably hold my nose and go long. XNP. Let's see. Wait a minute. Is that a stock symbol? Not sure what that means. But, all right. So what were some of the other ones we were looking at? All right. So we already talked about Tesla. Oh, this is one I was looking at. Um, Broadcom. Right. Stock was up on Friday, but that's not the most bullish looking day in the world. Right. Gave up almost all of its gains and ended up right back where it started. So if market moves higher, it probably will too. But it's just not the greatest looking day. That was one that I found today that I really liked. We traded this a while back. I haven't looked at it in a while, but you have that nice support shelf at 125, and then up top clearly that 135. Then above that you have 140. I kind of like this is showing you what to do. This thing, held above 130. I'd probably, willing to make a play on it for a run back to that 135 shelf up top because you can kind of see it looks like through here maybe there's a lot of hitting and bouncing on top of that. So kind of playing off the fives, if you will, 125, 130, 135, 140. So I thought that made some sense. On this, we obviously had a great trade last week with Lowe's. Could have been a lot more. I certainly didn't. Kind of stinks because you wish you could see a 3% day coming, but we targeted this for 250. We got out a little early. Now, if I'm being honest, I mean, I wouldn't have stayed in for Thursday. You got a target, you got a plan. That would have been a 400% gain. You know, um, got to be careful not to let greed take over. So when I say we could have got a little bit more, I just mean we didn't let it go completely to 250, but it did end up getting there that day. Because again, you're looking at context, you're looking at what's going on right now, and you're not thinking to yourself, "Hey, hold on a second. Hey, I think this might be a 3% down day." But yeah, we had a nice little trade there. I don't know if I would do that. What I do know is this: if we do get a rally take hold, right, and it gets back up to 260, that'd be the ideal spot to look to buy puts. So I can definitely say that. Home builder has been getting knocked around, that's for sure. Missed this one. Had this on my list if it broke 102 chains there. And I saw this when I was going through all my stocks. I was a little bummed that I took my eye off of it. But that's kind of the drawback of having so many stocks. That's why you really only need like maybe 20, 25. But I have so many with ETFs here in the middle that sometimes you miss this. But when this broke, should have been a pretty easy trade. I'm going to go with probably still has some more room to do on the downside overall. Right, if you take the height of this range, we probably expect it to be somewhere down near 90 or lower eventually. So kind of missed the boat on that one. Not kind of, definitely. And anybody else we were watching here? Let's take a look at our buddy Futu. Yeah, that thing looked like it was picking up steam again, and then never mind. We are looking at MDB. MDB's been a pretty good mover here. Earnings knocked it around. So this is one of the ones we took a shot at a strangle. We've got 3.5 days for this thing to, you know, uh, move basically $15 one direction or the other. So we felt pretty good about that happening. We shall see on that front. Again, the market will likely dictate. The Dell trade, we were thinking, hey, if markets rally, this thing should run to 120. Let's see, I'm assuming we're, yeah, open up a little bit higher. And then, yeah, we'll see how that works. So, yeah, I mean, MDB is something we play. Um, I think we had just puts at one point last week, but then coming into this week, went and decided to, and again, look at the stock holding up right at that old level of 240, right? So if it does, pick itself back up, same, in all likelihood with the market, then we would think that 260 would be the level you'd get to on the upside. Notice how on the way down, it stopped to think about it, right? That old level of ours. So if it does run up, that would be our target. If it breaks, I think it gets further than 230. I think you could find yourself at 220. So, and then let's see, Nvidia turned around nicely last week. I mean, kept looking like we were going to break down here. It looks like I Head and Shoulders, right? But it sure looked like we were trying to break down, and then I don't know. I still be a little nervous with that. Kind of like breaching this. It's like, well, yeah, you held there, but you know, uh, think of it as good old fashioned supply and demand. You know, and that demand, always held here, but it's almost like you punctured. You got rid of some of it. One of our barriers, one of our force shields is gone, and now we're kind of falling here. Just kind of makes you wonder, right? What's our trend? What are we doing? You know, just basic back of the napkin type thing. Nothing too in depth. Palantir was one we were looking at last. We considered it, but we didn't do anything with it. So kind of getting up there in the new highs. So who else were we watching last week? MU obviously got smacked pretty good. I considered this for a long play. That was a nice turnaround on Friday. So, but it's always an aggressive play. You try to take out a flyer on something. Just did that. So you just kind of have to know that going in. Hey, take a shot, but don't be surprised if you lose there. Meta going right up today so far, hitting that 600 right on the nose. Right, that's our old level there. The breakdown, little disappointed there that or surprised, not surprised. I hate to use the word surprise because the market never really shouldn't ever quote surprise you. It not doing what you expected is what the market does. So why is it a surprise? So that's why I always feel funny saying surprise. But when it broke to that 600, I would have expected maybe a little bit more than getting to 640. But again, the market has been struggling. The market has not been going up. It's actually been going down. So um, Lulu, we looked at app. Let's look at Lulu, John. Yeah, we always love Wade. Looks like you and I are on the same page, man. I just looked at MU. So yeah, I kind of like that close. Do I set alerts at your target numbers? Sometimes, a lot of times. Depends on the trade. Meta is not my friend. That part is true. So I'm not trading Meta. But let's be honest. I'm only like 1 in 28, right? I mean, it's not that bad. But yeah, Lulu following through. I mean, certainly this isn't a spot that I'd expect Lulu to hold up, but nice little turnaround. I think you take back here, and you know we've taken out Friday's high, so that's not a bad idea, bad thing. So you could take a shot here on Lulu. Great thing about Lulu is it's a pretty good mover, kind of like MDB, right? And these are ones we kind of like that you can take these longer shots, and they're not as low probability as one might think on the surface because they're pretty nice movers. What else here? What else is in there? I don't see much else. Who else? Tell you what, crowd got us though. We had some good trades, but crowd was not one of them. When that thing took out our little pattern here, we thought we were determined to get there. That changed pretty quick. So But that's why we're commonly on both sides. Um, we had these puts, uh, still walked away nice and profitable for the week. So yeah, I think Gambit had one heck of a run to finish the year. There won't be a trade for Gambit this week, so Gambit's year is over. What a great 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it was, 6 weeks. Finish on a positive note. Look at some other stuff. Seemed like a nice close for Home Depot. Seems like it. You just always remember too. Just don't forget, like market, market, market. So often it just seems that the students that I coach and I work with, they're focusing on just the stock, which definitely matters. But I think at the end of the day, there weren't too many stocks that were spared on Wednesday, right? So you just want to kind of try to do a lot of homework on, okay, which way do I think the market's going to go? Because if you get that right, you're going to win your fair share of the battles. I'm just looking back around here. Like I said, I wasn't really all that impressed with Friday's close, one way or the other. Um, I mean, it didn't really leave me with like a bullish bias coming in. Like I'm just dying to get long here. so, so yeah, if you told me we were lower this week, I wouldn't be really surprised or anything. All right. Not. I think we covered everything I got. Let's see. Got that. Got that. Yeah, I think we covered everything on that front. So, thoughts on shop? Let's take a look. Let's find out. Really don't have an opinion on it here, John. I think if you get a decent market close today and this closes near its high of the day above 110, I think I could be swayed in to do something on the long side. But I think what I'm running into is I'm not really a big fan of that close on Friday. Which I'm not saying that makes me bearish on anything here, but it just doesn't make me want to do too much on one side or the other. Again, as you probably know, that's why we went in on both sides. Because hey, I mean, if we can get 2%, 3%, 1% type days, we'll take both sides of the market all day long, right? If we don't have a bias to one side or the other. And look, market open up here in the green. Look at my list. We're seeing this a lot. But that shouldn't be a shock, right? It shouldn't be a shock that we see something like, hey, NASDAQ, S&P up, but what we have been seeing, just a reminder for the past several weeks, down. And now we're talking about thousands of stocks, not just the 100 stocks in the NDX or the 500 in the S&P, right? And I know some people don't care about the Dow anymore, but I think it still matters. And so we're seeing the broader move is to the downside. So looking at my list and seeing that over half of it appears to be red, or at least half of it, probably isn't that big of a shock. I mean, I'm going to keep an eye on this guy because again, if he can fail to hold the 125, sets up a nice put play. Probably just targeting the 120. And if I remember, one thing about this, I think remember it might have been a little thin at times. Let's see. Yeah, it's probably a thin week though, so it's probably not. I don't know if this is indicative, but But one thing I do remember is these weren't very expensive. So, all right. Christmas long shot or lotto? Well, there's a good question. Problem is, some of the ones that long shot or lotto. I mean, I just don't think you can get that on this. I don't think that's happening on that. I mean, these 300s are only around a buck. Keeping in mind your starting point for that is like $9 or $10. So you need to sell off pretty darn quick. But the thing is, as long as it got to 300 this week, you're probably at least tripling your money. So I don't know. Let me look. Um, that's tough, man. That's tough in the beginning of the week. We usually only look at lottos like the day before, like on a Thursday. Beginning of the week's tough because the premiums are pretty darn high. We could look at is this guy. Jeez, that one's expensive too. All right, never mind. Yeah, it's tough, Thomas. Because basically, you have to make like a ludicrous call. You guys say, "Look, I know this looks like bad shit, but trust me, this is gonna work." Let me look though. Let's see. Well, that's gross. All right, well, wait a minute here. This isn't awful. Your 260s are just around 50 cents. So it's not a huge winner, but hmm, these 80s are hanging out for around a quarter. Any of that look good to you, Thomas? I'm having trouble finding anything, but I don't know if that looks any of those. Baidu. I don't know on this. Upstart. Wow. Sorry about your luck. Let's see. I mean, what I will say about this one, Wade, is if it took out that 65, you could see one heck of a slide really quickly. So again, something like the 60s because that'd be your target on the way down. I mean, you could do the 61s if you want. The 62s around 50 cents. So you could play for, obviously, this is just moving with the market right now. So if the market did take a slide this week and this thing took out that 65, I think you're here pretty quick. Eventually you're down here, or at least to this, whatever's happening right here, that 57 at these intradays. I don't know how important those intradays will be, but we know from the past 55 was. But yeah, you'd be banking on the market going lower, and because I don't think this is going lower, just like I do with most stocks. I don't think, I think look, my list is getting redder and redder and redder. So, and of course, you could take that shot at MDB. Kind of the way this. I think this might be my favorite one. Remember, we're talking about a lotto to start the week. There's just nothing you're probably going to see that's going to be like, wow, I think that looks great. So it's like, what do I think looks the best, not crazy? And I think something like this in a market environment where we sell off makes a lot of sense. And then, like I said, MDB is garbage lately. So you could take a shot way down here at these 220s. Okay. So if this thing picks up steam again, these are only around 50 cents also. Your starting point on that is somewhere in the area around $4, $5. So there could be something there. This takes out 240. You could see this pretty quick. So, Thomas, that was Futu. Futu. This guy. And Wade's Upstart, like I said, if you want to bank on a market decline, I could see maybe shooting for the 60, 61, 62 area here. And then MDB, maybe somewhere down near those 220s. But, all right, folks, I know we ran a little longer today, but hope everybody has themselves a wonderful Christmas, Happy New Year, all that kind of stuff. We will be back here in 2 weeks. No more calls the rest of the week. And then I'll be back on deck, regular schedule on that Thursday, the 2nd. So everyone enjoy it. Have a great one. We'll get back to work at the end of next week and get back to making some money. All right. Take care.